woman is standing in her kitchen at 11 p.m., staring at a sink full of dishes she doesn't remember using. She spent the entire day answering emails, sitting in 3 meetings that could have been a single sentence, replying to messages from people she barely likes, and scrolling through updates from people she's never actually met. Somewhere in all of that, the one thing she actually cared about, the project she's been dreaming about for 2 years, never got touched. Not for 5 minutes. Not once. And as she stands there, exhausted but strangely empty-handed, one thought quietly surfaces. I was busy all day, so why does it feel like nothing happened? If that thought has ever crossed your mind, stay with me, because we're about to unpack something most people never stop long enough to see clearly. And the book that pulls this entire idea together, Focus on What Matters, is linked right in the description below. It's a short, direct book, and it doesn't waste your time explaining theory for the sake of theory. It hands you a working system for cutting through noise and putting your energy where it actually counts. If today's video resonates with you even a little, I'd genuinely encourage you to grab a copy through that link. It's priced low enough that it costs less than the coffee you'll buy tomorrow morning, and I promise you this, if you actually read it and apply what it teaches, it will quietly become one of the most valuable life-shaping books you own. It adds real value, not just information. The link is right there in the description whenever you're ready. Now, let's get into it. Here's a question worth sitting with for a moment. Have you ever finished an entire day, checked every box on your to-do list, replied to every message, sat through every meeting, and still felt like you'd accomplished absolutely nothing that mattered? That feeling isn't laziness, and it isn't a lack of discipline. It's the result of a very specific, very common trap, mistaking motion for progress. Most people assume that a full calendar equals a full life. But a packed schedule and a meaningful life are two completely different things, and confusing them is probably the single most expensive mistake modern people make. You can be in motion constantly, answering, attending, reacting, scrolling, and still be standing exactly where you started a year ago. Meanwhile, someone working a fraction of your hours but pointed at the right target moves further in a single quarter than you do in 3 years. The difference was never effort. It was direction. Let's look at why this happens, starting with something basic about how your brain treats urgency versus importance. Your brain is wired to respond to what's loud, not to what's valuable. A ringing phone, a flashing notification, a coworker standing at your desk. These things demand an immediate reaction, whether or not they actually deserve one. Meanwhile, the things that truly matter, your health, a strained relationship, the skill you wanted to build for years, the project only you can finish, rarely make any noise at all. They don't ping you. They don't interrupt you. They simply wait quietly while you attend to everything that happens to be loud that day. And because loud things get answered first, day after day, the quiet things that actually shape your life keep getting pushed to tomorrow, a tomorrow that somehow never arrives. Here's an example that makes this painfully clear. Picture 2 software engineers starting their careers on the exact same day with the exact same skill level. One of them spends his days responding instantly to every Slack message, joining every optional meeting, saying yes to every small favor a colleague asks. He looks like the most helpful, most available person on the team. The other engineer blocks off 2 hours every morning, turns off every notification, and works only on the one feature that will actually move the product forward. He looks less available. He replies to messages slower. But 18 months later, he's the one who shipped the feature that changed the company's direction, while the helpful one is still juggling requests, well-liked, exhausted, and stuck in exactly the same role he started in. Same intelligence. Same hours. Completely different trajectory, because one of them protected his attention, and the other one rented it out to whoever asked first. This brings us to something economists have studied for decades, something that explains far more of our daily behavior than we realize, the concept of opportunity cost. Every single hour you give to something is an hour you cannot give to something else. That sounds obvious, almost too simple to matter. But most people never actually calculate it. When you say yes to a meeting that adds nothing, you're not just spending 60 minutes, you're spending the version of your afternoon where you could have made real progress on the thing that actually matters to you. The bill for that decision doesn't arrive immediately. It arrives months later, disguised as the sinking feeling of, why haven't I made any progress on my real goals? Now here's a psychological layer most people never consider, and it's a strange one. The human brain treats important but not urgent tasks as if they were optional, even when we know, intellectually, that they're the most important things we'll do all week. Writing the book, starting the business, having the honest conversation with a parent before it's too late, getting your health checked instead of ignoring the symptom. None of these things scream at you the way a text message does. And because the brain is wired to chase whatever is loudest in the moment, the truly important things get quietly voted off the schedule, week after week, without a single dramatic decision ever being made. Nobody wakes up and decides, I will ignore my most important goals this year. It just happens, one small, reasonable seeming trade-off at a time. Let's step back into history for a moment, because this isn't a new problem, it just has new disguises. In ancient Rome, the philosopher Seneca wrote to a friend about how strange it was that people guard their money and their property so fiercely, yet hand over their time, the one truly irreplaceable resource, to absolutely anyone who asks for it. He observed that people would fight over a small piece of land, yet let years slip away doing things that added nothing to their lives, simply because refusing felt impolite or inconvenient. 2000 years later, the tool has changed. It's a phone instead of a house guest, but the exact same surrender is happening just faster and to more people at once. Here's a mental model that reframes this beautifully. Imagine your attention as a container of sand, and every day you're handed a full container. Some of what fills that container is fine sand, small low-value tasks, replying to a casual message, checking a minor update, sitting through a routine call. And some of it is a small number of large rocks, the handful of things that actually determine whether your year meant something. Here's the catch. If you pour the sand into the container first, the rocks never fit. There's no room left. But if you place the rocks in first, the sand somehow finds its way around them anyway. Almost everyone lives their life pouring the sand in first because sand is easy, immediate, and satisfying in the moment. The rocks require intention. And intention is the one thing distraction is specifically designed to erode. Let's talk about why saying no feels so uncomfortable, because understanding this is half the battle. Humans evolved in small tribes where being disliked by the group could mean literal exile, and exile could mean death. That instinct hasn't disappeared just because we now live in cities with strangers instead of tribes with kin. So when you decline a request, skip a meeting, or turn down a quick favor, some old, deep part of your brain quietly registers it as a small social risk, even when the rational part of you knows it's completely harmless. This is why saying yes feels safe, even when it costs you dearly, and saying no feels dangerous, even when it costs you nothing at all. Recognizing this doesn't make the discomfort disappear, but it does make it easier to override because you can finally see it for what it is, an outdated alarm, not an accurate warning. Let's bring in an example from outside the tech and business world because this pattern shows up everywhere. A physical therapist noticed that her patients with the fastest recoveries weren't the ones doing the most exercises. They were the ones doing the fewest, but doing them with total focus and full effort, every single day, without skipping. Patients who tried to do 15 different exercises, rushed and distracted, actually recovered slower and re-injured themselves more often. Fewer things done completely beat more things done partially every time. The body doesn't care how long your exercise list is. It responds to depth of effort, not breadth of activity. Your career, your relationships, and your goals work exactly the same way. Here's another layer worth sitting with, something behavioral economists have documented clearly. The more options you're juggling at once, the worse your decisions become on all of them, not just some of them. This is sometimes called cognitive overload, but you don't need the technical term to feel it. Anyone who's tried to work on 5 different projects in one afternoon knows exactly what it feels like. Every task gets a smaller, weaker, more distracted version of your attention, and none of them gets your best work. It isn't that you're incapable. It's that focus doesn't divide cleanly. Split it 5 ways, and you don't get 5 smaller amounts of your best thinking. You get almost none of it, spread thin across everything. So here's the uncomfortable question this leads to. If you can't do everything well, what should you actually be doing? Most people never answer this question directly. They let it get answered for them by whoever emails first, by whatever feels urgent that morning, by whatever everyone else around them seems to be prioritizing. The alternative is deliberately uncomfortable but simple. Sit down and write out no more than 3 things that would define whether this year was actually meaningful to you. Not 10 things. 3. Health. A specific relationship, a specific piece of work you want to finish. Whatever they are for you, they need to be few enough that you could recite them from memory at any moment, in any conversation, without hesitation. Once you have those 3 things clearly named, something powerful becomes possible. You finally have a filter. Every time a new request, opportunity, or distraction shows up, you can ask a single question: does this move me closer to one of these 3 things, or does it just feel urgent? Most things, once you ask that question honestly, reveal themselves as noise. Not bad things. Not even wrong things. Just things that were never actually yours to carry in the first place. Let's talk about what happens once you start protecting that focus, because the payoff isn't only external. There's a quieter, deeper reward that almost nobody talks about. When your energy is scattered across a dozen half-finished things, there's a persistent, low-grade anxiety that follows you around. The sense that you're forgetting something, failing at something, letting someone down somewhere. But when your attention is narrowed onto the few things that genuinely matter, that anxiety fades not because your life got smaller, but because it finally got aligned. You stop feeling like you're constantly falling behind on everything, because you finally stop trying to run in 12 directions at once. There's a story worth mentioning here about a woodcutter working in a dense forest. A traveler watched him hacking away at a tree for hours with a visibly dull axe, sweating, exhausted, barely making progress. The traveler suggested he stop for 10 minutes and sharpen the blade. The woodcutter refused, saying he didn't have time to stop, he was too busy chopping. He kept swinging that dull axe for the rest of the day, making painfully slow progress, convinced that stopping would cost him more than it saved. Most people live exactly like that woodcutter. They're so busy being busy that they never stop to ask whether the effort itself is even aimed correctly. 10 minutes of clarity spent identifying what actually matters is worth more than 10 hours of energetic effort spent on the wrong target. Now, a practical way to apply all of this, starting tomorrow morning, before anything else competes for your attention. Before you open your phone, before you check a single message, spend the first 30 minutes of your day on the one thing connected to your 3 priorities. Not because 30 minutes will finish the project, it won't, but because it sets the direction of the entire day before the noise gets a chance to set it for you. Whatever gets done first, uninterrupted, tends to define the emotional tone of everything that follows. Whatever gets postponed until later tends to quietly disappear into everything else that fills the day instead. Here's a second practical shift, one that sounds small but changes almost everything. Build a short list of things you will not do and treat it with the same seriousness as your to-do list. Not checking messages before a set time. Not saying yes to a meeting that has no clear purpose. Not scrolling for just 5 minutes during work hours. This list isn't about restriction for its own sake. It's about protecting the space that your 3 real priorities need in order to breathe. Most people obsess over what to add to their day. Very few ever ask what needs to be removed, even though removal is usually where the biggest gains are hiding. One more idea worth carrying with you because it reframes everything we've talked about so far. Confidence doesn't come from doing more things. It comes from finishing the right things. A person who completes 3 meaningful goals in a year feels more capable, more grounded, and more in control than a person who started 20 things and finished none of them, even if the second person technically did more. Your brain doesn't build self-trust from busyness. It builds self-trust from evidence, proof that when you decide something matters, you actually follow through on it. And that evidence only accumulates when your attention isn't scattered so thin that nothing ever gets a real chance to finish. So let's go back to that woman standing in her kitchen at 11 p.m., staring at a sink of dishes she doesn't remember dirtying. Her problem was never a lack of effort. She worked hard all day, every day. Her problem was that her effort had no filter, nothing telling her which requests deserved her time and which ones were simply loud. And the moment she starts asking that one question, does this move me toward what actually matters, or does it just feel urgent? Her days will stop feeling like a blur of motion and start feeling like actual progress, even if she ends up doing less than she used to. If you've ever felt like that woman, working constantly, yet somehow arriving nowhere, the shift doesn't require more hours in your day. It requires a filter for the hours you already have. Tonight, before you go to sleep, take 2 minutes and write down the 3 things that would actually make this year meaningful to you. Just 3. Keep that list somewhere, you'll see it tomorrow morning, and let it be the first filter every request has to pass through, starting with the very next notification that lights up your phone. And if this idea landed for you, the book behind everything we just covered, Focus on What Matters, walks you through this exact system in far more depth: how to identify your real priorities, how to build the discipline to protect them, and how to say no without guilt eating you alive afterward. I've linked it in the description below, and it's available at a genuinely low price, easily worth far more than what it costs. I'll say it plainly, if you read it and actually apply what it teaches, it will add real lasting value to your life. The link is right there whenever you're ready to stop managing noise and start protecting what actually matters.